Welcome back to another template design video, and in this one we're going to look at the valley hole, which is a nice and straightforward concept that's really flexible. Essentially all a valley hole really is a hole with elevation, where typically you're traversing a valley, either kind of going down and then back up or playing across it, but all the hole is really testing, the only shot value is can you manage elevation change, and as such there's a ton of interesting ways in which to do it. So we're going to analyse this a little bit, looking at some different examples as to how you might add a bit of variety by using elevation change. So we're here at the second at Fairyland, which was Joe's major course, and you can see straight away that we're hitting down to then go back up. You can tell that there's a significant downhill on the tee shot with 45 down, versus actually the green is only 17 down from where we stand. So you're going to face what this sort of hole is really interesting for, of going down and then back up, provided it's not overused, is it's forcing you to calculate both downhill elevation change and where the ball's going to run out to, as well as uphill. To make matters even more interesting, there's a significant camber on this hole away from the dog leg, so it's reverse camber. Reverse camber is basically the land moves the opposite way to which the dog leg goes. So therefore you're really having to hug the inside line in order to stay on a good line towards the green. He's also bunkered the high side, which makes that even more interesting, and we've got bunkers low, so it's a really challenging tee shot. You've also got a very hard sloping green which fits the camber of the fairway, and a bunker that you definitely don't want to be in short right of the green. So it's putting pressure on both shots, but in terms of how we manage, first of all, where's the ball going to land out? Can I carry these bunkers? With 43 down, that's probably adding on an extra 10-15 yards maybe, but the wind's in my face, so where am I going to land? And we want to be careful of not rolling out into these bunkers, because that would be one of the worst places to be. Then on the uphill shot, we're going to have to factor in some stance and elevation change as well. So tee shot's nicely out of the way and found a relatively flat lie. But now we're thinking about how high up are we going to hit, where on this slope are we going to be, all of those sorts of things. So you can see it's a hole that, as a design, basically makes you think about how far is this club going to carry. So it's posing a different question to some of the other templates that we're looking at, which are less elevation dependent. So the next example of the valley that we're going to look at is the 10th at Raynor Ridge. As you can see from the tee, it's about 46 feet down, so a sizable elevation change on a relatively long par 4. Now what that really does is it poses a question of, can we carry this bunker? And if we do, you'll notice that if you're hitting over the corner of this bunker and bringing that one into play, you're going to be rewarded with a really good look down the green. If we look at where the flag is, there's this tiny little spine just in front of it, which is going to mean that if the more from the left you're coming at it, the more actually you can access, land it about here, access that tiny little funnel slope there and run it just towards the pin. So as ever, you're rewarded on these courses for basically being heroic and indeed strategic. The further we play out this way, which with the wind today we're not going to have a choice, we're going to have to go this way, you're hitting more over this bunker and towards these ones. So the subtlety of angles, if you compare that look at the green to this one, it's really well designed. Now what this is really asking you a question, imagine the wind wasn't there, is basically, can you judge elevation? Can you work out whether your driver has enough on that elevation change to carry this bunker or not? In this case, it's kind of taken away from us. We've got to play out here, and it's a long enough hole that we're going to have to play way out wide anyway. Might have missed the fairway. No, we're okay. And now you've got a really long shot in. This bunker is beautifully placed in that it blocks your view of the other greenside bunkers, and so you've got a very long shot in to a green that actually isn't too severe, but can we get it really close? Well, the angle that we're coming in over this little spine means that we're going to have to be lucky and bounce it in the upslope in order to run it over, and I just don't think that's necessarily going to happen. But you can play for the heart of the green and you're making a 2-putt all day long. So it's another really good design. As you can see from today, with wind into us, it plays very differently and really long and quite challenging. If it's downwind, you can potentially bomb it straight over that bunker and you've got maybe a wedge in. Different pin positions as well will change how this plays. I really like this one just because those two slopes are not big, they're really subtle ones, but you can see the way in which they really facilitate that one angle coming in from this side towards this pin. It's a great study for that reason. So the next example of the valley hole we're going to look at is the 6th at Greenstone River, 466 yards, and this one always, whenever it was on tour, I think, this was always the handicap 1 hole. It was by far the toughest, and the reason being that the approach was just really tricky. In terms of what the valley's asking you to do, it's really manage elevation change. So you've clearly got the valley here and a raised green, and you had an option off the tee which probably feels a little bit forced now, as everything on this course does. It's showing its age a touch, but you could hit 3-wood down this side and you'd be facing that sort of angle in, and you can potentially you gain a little bit more green to work with because you're coming in this way, or you can hit driver down this way and you're potentially facing just a wedge in. But as you can see, the green, I actually enlarged it for this game. The green's pretty shallow, and once you get over this spine, it does run kind of middle to back and middle to front. So it was very much, it has a little bit of a knoll to it in that sense as well, in that what it's really asking you to do is hit a shot from here and get your number absolutely right whilst you're still hitting uphill some 20 feet or even like 35 feet from down here. The bunkering just in front of the green, it's not my best, but it looks intimidating enough and adds to that feel. So there was a choice to be made off the tee in terms of which angle you would rather have, but really the challenge for each of these pins was, can you manage that elevation change? Can you really deal with that shallow green? Now there was some help within it. You had a backstop here for this pin, which you can use more if you're coming in at it from this side. Same with this pin. It's in a little tiny bowl and you've got a big backstop there. You could actually land the ball slightly short as well and run it on. But for these 2 pins, I think one of these was pin 1, possibly that one, you'd also have to be landing it just over that spine and then not too far because it could roll off the back. And it's for those reasons that this was the handicap 1 hole. It's definitely a tricky hole, but as ever when you're doing tougher holes like this, it was followed by a short hole with a potentially nearly drivable 7th hole, and then a really short par 3 and 1-2 par 5s on the course. So I didn't feel too bad about giving you a tough 6th hole because I felt it fitted in with the routing pretty well. But again, another example of the valley hole and how you can make that work. Back to NGLA for our next one, and we're not really going to term any of these twists on the template because there's not really very many twists in how you can use a valley. There's just a land feature and you use it however you want. This one's the first hole, and it's a really, really cool opener, just in terms of the options that it offers. Now, first of all, I think it's great to look at the fairway shaping. The fairway runs diagonally from front right to back left, but what it does is it effectively provides you with some 90-100 yards worth of width and angles that you can generate into that green. So already, just by the way that the land movement works, this clever bunkering allowing you to use that real width, that gives you so many options in terms of how you play the hole, because it's going to play very differently if you take a driver down this side to if you lay up all the way over here. Now we look at the green, and there's, like all of them on NGLA, there's a lot going on with some really bold slopes, and for certain pins you're going to want to be in certain places. So this backstop right here, well, you're probably going to want to be coming in from the right hand side because you can use that. You've got, as ever, it's not saying that it's impossible from this side, but if you're going at it from this side, you don't have the same margin for error as you do an approach on this side. You can be long and it will suck right back next to the pin. For this one in the middle, kind of up to you. I would probably rather be down the left because I think the backstop's more coming down here, whereas if you're going this way, you're potentially running all the way off here. This pin, you definitely want to be over on the left hand side. And then for the back pin, I think I'd probably go right again. So it's kind of dependent on if you're looking at the tee, can you see the pin? If you can, you go right. If you can't, you go left. There's a lot going on here. In terms of the elevation change, you'll see that from the top right hand corner, the tee is 25 feet up. From here, the green is 14. And the valley is often used, it doesn't have to be, you can use the elevation change however you want, but it's often used as like a play down into the valley and then play up to kind of like a green perched as a knoll, but it's not really got the same function. So with this one, also because it's short, in real life, a short par 4 is great to start with because you're really giving the player confidence that they can choose the club that they feel comfortable hitting. If they only want to hit a hybrid off the first tee, fine. They'd still only have, 140, so potentially pitching wedge 9-iron in. If they want to take driver over all of this trouble, yeah, they can do that as well and potentially start with an early score. As we talked about with the Knoll video as well, though, if you're taking driver up here and potentially rolling back, well, do you really want to leave that splash shot over a massive false front? It's really kind of your choice. And what I love about this hole more than any of the other things, the amount of options and choice that it gives you as to how you want to play the hole. It's not really forcing one particular way, it's just giving you different alternatives which each lead to slightly different approach shots. So another great example of a valley and how you might use that, but more than anything, just a really classy opener. So for our final look at the valley, we're looking at the 8th at Strathlorne, and this is slightly different to some of the others, but I still think it just about earns the term of being a valley hole because of this little ravine that pops up just midway down the fairway. Obviously, the cliff edge plays a major part in this one as well, as you would expect. A hole like this has to be designed around that one big feature, but really it's that little ravine that splits the fairway that is the prime source of interest strategically on this hole, as well as the elevation change from the high point of the fairway all the way down to the low point of the green and where you're standing on the tee. So leaping back to the tee, and you see straight away that you've got the green perched all the way out on the side, which gives it a really daunting tee shot. It also means that you're either playing way away from the green and up here, therefore every inch left is lengthening that shot, or you're playing really close to the cliff edge and shortening it just a little. Now if we look at the overhead as well, you've got out of bounds, as you would expect, is all the way along the cliffside, but also part of the ravine. You can clear it with the longest drivers, but not necessarily just the very longest. And you can actually drive this green if you land just about here. So we'll have a little look at that. But it's a really tight fairway, and you've got bunkers right, a bunker straight on if you don't quite hit this slope. There's a little hint of a reverse redan here as well, kind of similar to that hole on Kaiuma, but with a bit more strategic interest, I'd say, here. And if you push it way right, you're obviously gone. So you can run the ball all the way down, particularly for some pins, kind of the ones midway, or there's this little pin right at the front that you can kind of run into the bowl. That's very much an option. But if you choose to take that option out of play, it then becomes one big fairway, and what shot do you want to leave in? And I've always thought that this view here was probably my favourite on the course. You're playing significantly downhill to a green that is just floating in the ocean, and it's a really terrifying shot, particularly when the ball is in the air and you've got no idea where it's going with the follow cam. So how does the valley work here? Well, it's really just bisecting the fairway, firstly at a vertical point, but also horizontally. You're going, how far do you want to go over here? Every little inch further right you go brings more danger, but it's also more of a chance of you landing on the green. Left, you're pinched a little bit by that bunker, so it's really pushing you to challenge that out of bounds right. If you chose not to go for it, well, you can hit down to here and you've got flattish land. You can run it all the way down here. It's where the ball is going to end up that's more interesting, and actually the more you play safe off the tee, the trickier that second shot is, because particularly for this pin, you want to be far down so that you're taking that bunker out of play, and you also want to be on the flat, really, and the flattest portion is right next to the cliffside, which always works well because it means that balls rolling all the way down here don't roll off the edge, but also it rewards people who play as close as they possibly can to that cliff line, whether it's by taking the risk of having the ball landing on a hanging lie, or just really going very tight here by saying hitting a 5-wood right down here. And let's just imagine that hanging lie as well. Well, if you're standing here and all of the land is pushing you this way, well, that means that when you're playing your next shot, that's kind of pushing the ball even further long and to the right. So all the things that you don't want. And there's not, I wouldn't say there's a huge amount of hazards really going on here, but those that there are, and principally the land movement, make this one of the most interesting holes I'd say I've designed. So we're going to give this a go playing it sensibly, playing a 3-wood just up, aiming at that framing bunker, which kind of gives you a guiding line. And hopefully, well, it's a bit of a fast. So what we're going to end up with is that hanging lie, because we haven't quite been brave enough off the tee, and we will get that really scary view. although it's rolling down to a flattish spot. But you can see the view that we've left ourselves, you can see the lie that we've left ourselves, everything's going right. We've got the elevation changed now to really worry about from that valley, as you'd expect. But the green does give us a little bit of help. If we land it kind of middle-ish, it's probably running relatively close to this pin. So it's still very much a viable way of playing the hole. That might be but as you can see over here, it's definitely a scary shot. Might be a little too far left. And yeah, we haven't hit a good shot, and so we've just missed that little slope that would have taken it right the way down to the hole. But you can see there's a couple of different ways you might choose to play this hole. Tons of strategic interest, depending on where the wind is on each day. It will play differently, where the pin is, and for me that's exactly what you're looking for a short or drivable par 4. And I felt a good way to close out this video and indeed this series. So that's the valley template. It's really quite a flexible one, and there's loads of ways in which you can do it. And to be honest, they don't always need to be that strategic. It's more just how you're judging elevation. This one, the 16th at Kaiuma Bay, features a shot across a valley with waterfall and river and all the bells and whistles. But really, it's not playing that much other than a little bit of elevation change, and you have to think about it whether you're laying up or not. But in reality, it's how you choose to use that that's the interesting way in which this works, and there's so much variety. You can use it on any length of hole, but that's the core of the template. It's a very malleable one, and hopefully this has given you some ideas. I really hope that you've enjoyed the series, and see you again soon.